Welcome to the ABOP podcast. ABOP is the Alliance of Black Orchestral Percussionists, a nonprofit organization that focuses on mentoring future generations of Black percussionists. My name is Raynor Carroll. I am an ABOP founder and the former Principal Percussionist with the Los Angeles Philharmonic. Thank you for joining me on this podcast, Section Percussionist, Expectations and Responsibilities. My guests for this discussion are two ABOP mentors, Terry McKinney, Principal Percussion, Baton Rouge Orchestra, and Torrell Moss, Principal Percussion of both the Ashland and Mansfield Symphony orchestras. Gentlemen, welcome to the ABOP podcast.
Hello. How's it going?
Very good, and thank you for being here, and thanks for the time and effort that you give to our protégés. It is much appreciated. So our subject is section percussionists. What are some of the expectations and responsibilities of a section player in a symphony orchestra? That is our focus, but I also have a few questions from our protégés that I will include in our discussion. So I have our discussion broken down into three categories: music, logistics, and personality. So let's start with the music side. Terry, what's one of your expectations from the section regarding the music?
First and foremost, that the music is learned and that the players can not only play, of course, and prepare the music, but they understand the background of the piece that they're playing. They know what sounds are expected and will fit well with the ensemble. That the section knows how to set things up in the most efficient manner that will cause the fewest distraction, but also help contribute to the overall atmosphere of the ensemble.
Torrell?
Same. I mean, in terms of preparation, conductors can take things at all kinds of tempos. So being able to play something, on the quicker side, on the slower side, and then, playing in such a way, practicing in such a way where you can make adjustments sort of on the fly, because things will change.
Yeah.
But oftentimes the knowledge of who you're playing with and, the emotional aspect of the piece is really helpful and will make a lot of those decisions for you.
Absolutely. I would add versatility. I'd love players that are strong in all the areas. It's not like, well, I can really do some great tambourine things, but don't give me the bass drum. I don't know one thing about the bass drum, or vice versa. And I also ideally like a technician and a musician. So technique, great. But like you said, Torrell, they've got to be able to play the music and understanding of what's going on there. And, compatible concept on the instruments and the sound they're creating that works with the section. And let me throw in a protégé question here, which kind of relates to that. How do you bring your opinion of the sound into the mix? For example, using a different instrument or mallet from what may be recommended or provided to you. Very good question from a protégé. So who wants to hit that one?
As a principal, I welcome what the other players have to bring. If they've thought about it and they have they have a certain sound that they like, and if it fits and it works, I'm all for it. And if it's totally off the mark, then I'll mention something and see if we can meet halfway. When I sub with Houston, one thing I do, for example, if I play bass drum, I use what they have because that's what they're used to, and that it creates a sound that they're used to. And if I feel like there's a different sound that I could provide, if they're okay with it, then I'll see if I could bring something of my own. But I use what they have because that's what they're used to, and that's the sound that they like to hear.
And you'd love to be hired again.
Exactly.
I just have to throw that in there. Torrell?
A lot of the same. I mean, the instruments that, every orchestra has, they've usually had for a really long time, and that is just like a part of the sound of that section. So straying too far from that might not be the move, especially in a more established sort of long-term ensemble. But, then there are smaller ensembles, like regional ensembles, where you're sort of expected to bring a lot of your own instruments as well. And so, deciding what to play there, for me, is a matter of a lot of times experience, what I've done before and what's worked before, but then also I bring several options of things, usually. I have a duffel bag of stuff that I bring in, and I go for, it'll have several tambourines, different triangle options, what have you, and I'll try different things, and whatever I guess gets the least people looking at me sort of sideways is what I tend to use.
But Torrell, is that your approach as the principal or any gig you go to?
So when I am playing as a section player as a substitute or as a guest or something like that, that's usually my approach.
Okay.
As a principal, there is sort of a sound that I know works in the hall. There is sort of a sound that I know the conductor likes where I play, and so every once in a while, you run into the situation where you can tell maybe it's not fitting right, like you have a substitute that comes in, and as a principal, you can tell maybe this tambourine or whatever isn't really working. The sound they're getting on whatever instrument isn't really working either for the space or maybe for the conductor, and either it hasn't been voiced anywhere else yet, or maybe they don't know how to explain what they're hearing. And so sometimes as the principal, your job is to walk over and be like, hey, why don't you try this one too? I think this might be, helpful here.
Yeah, my approach is if a section player or an extra might happen to bring in a different sound that I hadn't thought of, let's try it. Let's try it in rehearsal. To me, that's what rehearsals are for. And then I can give an evaluation, as in, that symbol's a little dark for me for Ravel, or vice versa. That symbol's a little bright for Wagner, let's say. But I would be open, and of course, I think the bottom line is it's up to the principal. That's what they're hired for. That's a part of their job, is to shape the sound of the section, which is a part of the orchestra. So,
absolutely.
How about something that I would say overstepping the position, as in going a little bit further than that, whether it's with the instrument or giving direction to the other players that are in the section? Have you guys had experience with that?
I'm lucky enough to have not had a whole lot of experience with that. I would say, look, that possibility is always there, of course, right?
Yeah.
Somebody thinking they're being helpful, doing too much, or somebody who's used to being in a more of a leadership role even.
Right.
At the end of the day, it's one of those unfortunate instances when you're a supervisor of any kind where you have to sometimes be like, thank you so much for your input. I will take it under advisement, sort of like, I got it from here, kind of.
There you go.
Yeah.
I like that, yeah. Terry?
Same. I haven't really had that happen much. Have had subs that were very excited, very wanting to be involved, and they wanted to sort of just do things. And so if it's sort of even approached to where it seemed like they were overstepping, they were very responsive to what I would say. So if I said, hey, this is the way we're going to do it, or this is the way we've done it, or this is what I think we should do, they're very accepting and very, sometimes apologetic even, but nothing to the point to where there's any kind of tension or disagreements.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like in that situation, most of the time, it's a complete accident, an oversight.
Well, we hope so.
Yeah.
To me, the easy answer is run it by the principal,
Yeah.
It shouldn't be a big deal, But, like I say, the principal's there for a reason. And to me, if I'm a section player, I'm going to be respectful in that way. I'm not going to tell or advise someone else in the section necessarily, unless I absolutely know this is the way it's done here. But even then, I would almost always go, why not? Why not? To me, it's like the concert master wanting to phrase something a particular way. I'd ask the conductor first, knowing how they do. Because, it's the line of command, so to speak. So another protege question, which relates to music, is to what extent do we prepare unclear or flexible part assignments? Now, I'm not sure what they mean by flexible part. When I've assigned parts, it's not necessarily flexible. It's player one plays this, player two plays that, player, etc. But anyway, how do we prepare unclear parts?
As a section player, I've received very strange part assignments before as a section player where sometimes I'm holding a pair of cymbals, but I also have like a glockenspiel mallet, like also in that same hand, and I have to find a way to play a crash, put one cymbal down, play a mallet lick with, my 4 mallet grip, but with just 1 mallet, and then pick it up, crash again. So, I mean, at that point, it becomes sort of a creativity thing. I have in the past, I don't know if this is necessarily like advice to give, but I have in the past gone into rehearsal and found that there was someone else who had like an extra few measures of rest and they could do a thing
Right.
where if I'm sitting there juggling 3 instruments. And I would always, check with the principal and be like, hey, is this cool that I'm passing this off to them?
Yeah.
Just because it seems like they have a second, because there might be a reason why they don't want you to.
Yeah.
But I've done that before, where you're either juggling or you're trying to look for help somewhere.
Yeah. Terry?
I've had some part assignments that were sort of unclear or even confusing, and my first instinct is to say, okay, he gave this to me. Either he trusts that it's possible and I have to figure out how I'm going to do it, and I do it the best way that I can, or if it's absolutely impossible and it's still unclear, I'll go to the principal and say, this is what I'm capable of doing. There seems to be a problem here. What would you like for me to do? But I always go to the principal and check and make sure that whatever is unclear becomes clear with what they want and what they expect of me.
Yeah, I would say the same. I wouldn't go ahead and prepare the part if I'm not absolutely certain that it's playable and this is the intent of the principal. So again, lean to the principal. That's their job. So logistics-wise, an easy thing to say is the things we always do is arrive early and leave late. So what else would you guys say with setup and tear down?
The moment you have finished your setup, if you see other people that also are still working on theirs, just hop in and help. Just ask where that stand is going and help them put it there. Just take the load off.
Yeah.
I try to be early enough for everything that I'm set and able to warm up by 30 minutes.
Right.
Before downbeat.
Great. And this has happened for me a few times, I'll put it that way. We're all set, ready to go, and there's one player that has not arrived yet. We just go ahead, get out the stuff that they'll need, whether it's mallets, the instrument, or whatever, set it up, because it happens to all of us, whether it's traffic or whatever. I think that's a good colleague, someone that will look out for you, because you'd like the same too. If you're running late and you get there, let's say 5 minutes before downbeat, if someone had pulled your mallets out and put the instruments in place, I'd appreciate it too. So, Terry, anything to add to that logistically?
I would just say when things are set up, don't mess with anybody else's setup. don't tape from theirs. Don't move anything.
That's a good one.
And leave it alone.
You got your own space.
Right. And their own instruments. So if I need a mallet and it's over there, I don't walk over and take it and say I need it because they had it. I have to find something else. So.
Yeah, and the solution to that is communicate.
Right.
If you see something in someone else's station, you're eyeballing that mallet, ask them, do you need that mallet for this piece or whatever, because you never know. Maybe it's there by accident. Yeah, no, sure, take it. Or it's an extra, Right. Assisting other section players and the extras that come in that aren't a regular. They may not know where the instruments are. They may not know where to place things on stage. Just helping out, helping the principal in whatever way you can. I think that's one way to score points, so to speak. As in, you're reliable, you're dependable, you're professional. This is what we want to do. And here's a good question from another protege. What to do when the orchestra and your principal cannot supply required equipment?
It's a good question. I mean, your options are sort of to ask anyone if they have something you can borrow, or ask the principal if a rental is possible, especially if we're dealing with larger things, if we're talking about a bass drum or, a xylophone or something like that.
Yeah.
If you don't have something to supply yourself, you got to ask someone else.
Yeah. Same thing, Terry?
Yeah, exactly. Rentals, the way to go.
Point to the principal. Yeah. I mean, as a section player, it's not typically your responsibility if it's something that the orchestra and the principal has not or is not taking care of it. So I would start with a communication with them, the principal, and the principal says, no, I don't have this. Well, then maybe go to the orchestra manager and, just make sure you go through the proper channels of whatever your orchestra has to cover yourself before you go rent something and give them a bill. They're like, what's this? So I think that's pretty important. Let's go to personality, and this is a great area. And let me start with a question from one of our protégés. As a section percussionist, how do you go about building relationships with the other members? And what type of questions should you ask them?
I had a quick story. When I first started subbing with Houston, I remember sitting in the back, and Mark Griffith, one of the section percussionist, he was reading. He had a plane magazine. And so during the break, I asked him about it, and he was into flying, the small planes and everything like that. So I think, for me, I try to get a vibe and figure out, who I'm playing with in the section, see what their personality is like. I may ask them questions about, I really, you use this tambourine, you had a great sound, what do you use, or how do you do that, or what type of instruments do you use? Or questions outside of work that are not work related, about their hobbies or things they like to do outside of work, but nothing that's too personal, nothing that's creates any kind of discomfort, but just casual things. That's the way I approach it.
Yeah, it's the social side of what we do, who we are as a person, whether we're introvert, extrovert, or whether we're inquisitive or we just listen. It's an important part in how we get along with each other, because it's in part is how we work together. So I think that's really important. Torrell, what are some of the things you would say personality-wise are important for you?
Important for me would be, somebody who is more open, somebody who has an easy time getting along with others, and if they maybe don't with everyone, somebody who can be professional enough to not allow that to get in the way of anything. That's what I try to be. At least friendly and quiet when I need to be.
Yeah, that's a good point. Quiet. You don't want someone that's talking, and or talking during rehearsal, as in while the music's being played, or there's certain etiquette things that happen on stage that perhaps a younger player does not necessarily know, so they would observe, and if they see one of the experienced players talking or whatever, they might think, well, this is cool, this is okay, I can bring my phone on stage and just start texting, and which I'm a little removed from that, because when I retired, that wasn't the thing yet. So it may be now that they're checking where their next gig is while they're doing one gig. If I was principal, I wouldn't appreciate that. I would appreciate that they're sitting listening to the music, waiting for their entrance. And that's another small thing that I'll bring up. I don't think it's talked about very much, but when we're all sitting, whether it's Tchaikovsky 4, it's the last movement and it's a section we don't play, but then, it's a few measures before we do play. Do you guys have any etiquette as to when you stand up to play as a section?
In general, what I'm always trying to do, and if I have, players that I'm going to play with a lot, I try to have everyone, sort of learn to step up together if possible, and then sit down together if possible. So if there's, maybe you finished your triangle part 8 measures before the cymbal player finishes theirs, you can stand there for 8 measures and wait for them and sit down together. It looks nice, it creates solidarity, all of that.
Absolutely, yeah. Terry?
Yeah, I agree. Same exact thing. And if I'm a player where nobody else is standing and I have to play by myself, I give myself a good amount of time to stand up and prepare, because I think that if I waited to the last possible second, the other players would probably be concerned about is he going to get up and play. So I definitely 8 measures or however many measures to stand up, get set, and be ready to play. But other than that, like Torrell said, I follow the principal's lead whenever he or the other sections stand up. Just go along, and when they sit down, go along.
Yeah, I have stories with that. I didn't realize that I have unbelievable powers that I didn't know. Like you're saying, there's a passage where we all play, and I'm sitting, and it's coming. I'm just kind of checking out what's going. Nothing's happening. In other words, they're waiting for me, And then at a rehearsal, I jump up at the last minute. Then they'll all scramble because they're like, if Raynor's not moving, I'm not moving because it's probably not time yet. I'm not counting rests. But I am, of course. So, and that's a funny thing. But I've only done that as a joke in rehearsal. I would never do that at a concert. Not intentionally, anyway.
There have been, when I've played other gigs, I've learned to look for the toe, Everyone's sitting down in a line. The first person kind of puts their heel forward with the toe up in the air, and it's kind of like everybody ready?
Wow, that's very organized. Yeah. I'm not that organized when it comes to that. So what can we say about egos?
I mean, there's
no place for it, right?
There's no place for it. We're all going to do something awesome sometimes. We're all going to do something dumb sometimes, right. And that's just what it is. Yeah. And to allow the ego part to drive everything will just get in the way of the music.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think your words are taken differently by each player. I mean that literally what you said, Torrell. Some players would take it a certain way, as in, oh, that means I should do this and that, and others. I know what you mean. I would say you leave it before you enter the building. You leave your ego out there, and then you're working as a team. How about taking direction, whether it's from the principal or the conductor? I mean, I think we all know what it should be, but it's not always that way.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it should, whatever the conductor says, the principal does, and whatever the principal says, the rest of the section does. It's just how it needs to be.
And why should it not be any other way?
Because that would be chaos.
It is chaos.
There would be no cohesion. I mean, imagine if you have 5 people playing and every single one of them had a different sound concept in mind, had a different idea for how to express each different moment of the music. Nothing would agree.
The same example can be said for any other section of the orchestra, whether it's the French horn section, the violin section. If they each have their own idea of how to bow a passage, you have 12 violinists, you might have 15 different bows going different ways, So to me, it's an obvious thing, but I think, we should mention that. And I like to give a reason to the protégés and the students why we do what we do. It's not just that, for me, my teacher told me to do it this way. No, there's a reason. There's a reason we're called a section. Yes, we are soloists because I'm typically the only one playing cymbals. There's one on bass drum, one on snare drum, But as a section, we need to work together and create this particular sound that ideally the composer has in mind, So the same thing with working with the conductor. When they say something, whether it's use a wood stick or use a hard stick or use crash cymbals here when the part, to me, clearly says suspended, fine, that's what you want, There's not much leeway there, and I'm fine with that. Terry, you have anything to add to that?
No, like I said, I think it's pretty obvious and pretty clear cut. So.
And the consequences can be, let's say if you're an extra player, you might not get called again. And I don't think it's a might not. You probably won't. Right. And that goes to another area I think we haven't talked about with personality is, for me, as hiring an extra player, I don't care really how fantastic a player they are, but if they do not get along with others well, they're not a section-minded player, they're not, or they are, let's say they're more of a soloist, they have their own idea, they have their own brand of sticks that they've come out with that they use for everything. I'm not going to call them. I'm just not going to call on that player. And or if the player frequently cancels on me, they've got another gig that actually pays more. I'm fine, great with that, but just don't expect me to call you again, because I need someone that I can rely on, will be there, will have the part prepared, will do a great job, and will fit in with the section with the sound that we do, as opposed to, I don't know, is he going to make it today? Are they going to come or not? I mean, I have had that. I've had players that, believe it or not, have not shown up for whatever reasons. And more so, players that have canceled with, to me, not a lot of time to replace them because they got other gigs. So you got to keep that in mind. When you make a commitment, it says who you are if you hold through to it or if you choose to do otherwise. So, well, let me throw in a few more questions from our protégés. What are some best practice behaviors to implement to ingratiate oneself with a percussion section, as well as behaviors to avoid which may ruffle feathers?
There's so much. There's so much.
Well, let's start unloading it. If you got any stories, that's great too.
I touched on a couple of these earlier, but being the type of person who shows up early enough to have their stuff set up and then be able to even help other people with their things if they're bringing in stuff from the car or whatever. Being somebody who is able to be gracious and just make the change if they get a word from the principal that they got to do something different. Anything like that. Just being open and friendly. Like how would you want someone to be with you if you were like, hey, can you help me with this thing? Or hey, we're doing this way now. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think to throw in there, or someone who's responsible. I would like to work with somebody. I don't have to worry about them being on time. I don't have to worry about them not knowing their parts. I don't have to worry about them not having their materials. Somebody I don't have to worry about because I have my things to worry about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If I have to concern myself with, they don't have this or they don't, whatever, that takes away from me, and I'd rather not have to deal with that other stress.
Yeah. I always say, put yourself in the principal's position. We don't want you to be walking in 5-10 minutes before rehearsal. We want you to have an idea of the part before you get there. It's all prepared. You just work on ensemble once you're there because you can't practice that at home. And like we've all said, you're gracious, you're there early, you're helping others out, and you have a good, just to me, a laid-back personality versus a hyper. You make everyone else nervous. I think if you kind of give off that vibe of chatter, or whatever. So, all right, another question from another protégé. Do you have any fun stories of previous percussionist co-workers from which we can learn to be better section members? Now, I do, but I don't know if it's funny, and I'll start. Because to me, as a principal, it was not funny. I hired an extra once, and it was his first time, and I will say last time, playing with the orchestra. He did not have his music. He said to me, because when we're setting up, I'm like, here's your music stand and whatever. Where's your music? It's like, no, I got it up here. I said, that's not the way this works, even though you may have it memorized. I appreciate that, but you need a part. What if the conductor says, 7 before 8 or whatever? I got that. No, that's, and I would say the rehearsal for him was a mess. And it makes me look bad. So it didn't directly answer the question because for me it wasn't fun. It wasn't funny, but thinking about it now, how could you go to, and I'll be presumptuous or whatever and say, so a rehearsal with the Los Angeles Philharmonic and not have your music and just say, well, it's just all in my head. Well, like I said earlier, I did not call that player again. And my understanding is that he's a fine player. And like I said, I don't care. I don't care how well you play. If you don't conform and fit into what we do, and that's a part of it, bringing your music, not going to happen. So you guys have any stories, whether they're funny or not?
So I have played concerts before and fairly regularly, where we'll hire two people that happen to both be students at the same school as extras. One time there were two players, drove up together, no big deal. And they had, I think it was like, if I remember correctly, it was like a tambourine or like some small like noisemakery thing. This was a couple of years ago. And they both had like a similar sound that they were making. And I looked over at one point or another because I was like, I feel like that's almost the same sound that they're both making. And it turns out, without looking at each other at all, they were just like beneath the music stand, like passing the same thing back and forth to each other, not breaking eye contact or whatever with the conductor, always looking forward, just like sneakily passing this one thing back and forth because I think one of them forgot the tool they were supposed to have, the instrument. So, I mean, I would much rather it have been two different sounds, both people being entirely prepared or whatever, but it was one of those things I kind of had to like look at it and laugh. And then I went up to him after. I was like, was this the plan? Did one of us forget something? And they were like, I forgot my whatever. And I was like, okay. For instance, that was a story of the utmost percussion teamwork, by the way, in case that wasn't clear.
So when I first got the principal job, there was there's already a sub list, and there was this extra. And he's an okay player, but I walk into the rehearsals, and he's sitting in the back with an open newspaper, just reading. And when it's time to play, you get up and play. And he had a trap table, a music stand, but he never had a black towel, so he'd use like a sweater or whatever for a trap table. And so it wasn't long before I stopped calling. And he sent me a message, very upset that he wasn't on the sub list anymore. I'm like, well, the way that you approach rehearsals is not something that I really appreciate.
I'm sure the administration, the music director would all agree with you.
Yeah.
That's not the way to approach that. So, yeah. Terry, that's not funny.
I'm sorry, I know. But now I can laugh about it because it's
well, right.
So,
Yeah.
I would say, was he reading the financial section or the funnies?
The job ads.
The job ad. There you go. That's the right
now it's
answer.
Now it's funny.
Okay, another question from the protégés. What should we not be doing in rehearsal warm-up that would leave a bad impression, especially the first time playing with a group?
Leave all the super chop heavy stuff that has nothing to do with what you're about to play. Like, leave that for at home. I don't want to hear how fast you can play Porgy and Bess when we're about to play Ravel. Like,
Yes.
It's not helpful.
Yeah.
I think it's easier to say what should you be doing, and that is being attentive and paying attention. Not eating on your phone, talking, something that's not related to what your job is.
Another one. What else can we do to leave a lasting impression aside from sticking around for setup, tear down, and playing well?
Really easy way to do that is, especially if it's your first time with the group or first time with a particular player, I always walk in and, like, if I'm subbing, I walk in and I introduce myself and I say, hey, I'm Torrell, really glad to be here, whatever, something like that. And then I try my best to just stay, like, in pocket, like, on business the whole rest of the time I'm there. At the very least, they'll know that I'm professional.
Yeah, I treat, when I sub and I go in, it's as if I'm going into somebody else's house. I'm being welcomed to somebody else's house. So I don't disrespect the house and leave a mess. I clean up after myself. I help out. I'm courteous and I'm appreciative. I think the big thing for me is being appreciative that you are there and that you're getting to work and make music with other musicians. Not just as an extra sub or just even as a section player, is helping each other out, helping each other take care of the house and make the house a nice place to work.
Absolutely.
That's a great analogy. Terry, can I steal that from you?
Sure.
Yeah, that's what I would say. You're a guest in my house, and use the same approach as you come in. Do you ask, Do I need to take my shoes off? And then it's up to me to say, oh, no, just relax. You kind of find out what's the routine here? What's the norm? What is expected of me? And I don't want to be the one that's remembered for the negative things as they left a mess or they went through all the drawers looking for a triangle. They should just ask. So I think that's a great one. Very, very nice answer there, Terry. So one more from a protege. And this has to do with tenure. So this is a little bit different. So you can tell this protege is thinking beyond. He's like, what happens when I have my tenure review? So here's his question. Are there any differences in the tenure process between section percussion and principal percussion?
I don't know. I haven't experienced that.
I would say it depends on the orchestra. Yeah. And it depends on the candidate. Typically, if they have a current position, whether it's section or principal, they might have a shorter tenure, as in maybe a year instead of 2, because they have a job and the other job wants to know, is this person going to go to the new job or not? And that usually happens for the LA Phil when it's a principal position. They have a gig already. So do they need to get time off? Do they need to get a sabbatical to go do this or whatever? So I would say it depends on the orchestra, what their policies are, and what the position that the candidate has. Now, if they're fresh out of school, probably the tenure period is probably the same. But as I recall, it was negotiable with the candidate and the administration. And then if there's an orchestra involved with the orchestra, all 3 of them would talk and figure it out, because the existing orchestra wanted to know, are you coming back? And obviously the new orchestra that you won the audition for wants to know, or wants to have enough time to evaluate you as not just a player, but the things we've talked about. Are you going to get along with your section? And I think that's what, for me, you need more time, A month or 2 is not enough. I need to go on tour with this guy or gal. I need to go on, take bus trips, because that's what the orchestra does, So we want to know what their habits are. They may be great at home in the hall, but when we go on tour, they're always late or they're oversleeping or whatever. You guys have anything to add to that with the tenure process?
No, that's all fair. I haven't done both, so it's hard for me to say.
Yeah.
Same.
All right. Well, I think we've covered it all. Great questions from our proteges and excellent answers and discussion. Terry and Torrell, thank you very much for sharing your time and for all you do for ABOP and our proteges.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Much appreciated. That concludes this episode. I hope you enjoyed our discussion. A special thank you to our proteges for their thoughtful questions. Please consider donating to this nonprofit, ABOP. Your contributions are tax deductible and any amount is welcomed. Please check out our website at www.abop.us for information on how you can contribute. We would love to add you to our list of supporters and sponsors of our mentorship program. This growing list includes the Smithsonian Folklife Festival, the Ella Fitzgerald Charitable Foundation, Black Swamp Percussion, Cooperman Percussion, Freer Percussion, Innovative Percussion, In Sound Mallets, Majestic Percussion, Marimba One, Malatech, Remo, Sabian, Vic Firth, and Zildjian. Please follow our podcast and spread the word about ABOP. We greatly appreciate your support. I am Raynor Carroll, and we are the Alliance of Black Orchestral Percussionists, ABOP. Thank you for listening.